Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pelt Music Podcast. Shortly, we'll be joined by St. Agnes to talk about their latest album, Bloodsuckers. But before then, the usual reminders from myself. If you would, please do follow Pelt on social media. We're on Facebook at Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome, Kitty and John, to the Pelt Music Podcast. Absolutely delighted to have you both on today. How are you doing?
Yeah, good.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Obviously, a really exciting time for St. Agnes. Just put out your latest album, Bloodsuckers, which we're going to delve into shortly. But as I look out the window, I'm reminded that it's supposed to be summer. It doesn't really look like it at the minute. But obviously, you guys have been out with Monster Magnet across Europe, and you've just played 2,000 Trees as well, which I was lucky enough to catch your set out, which was one of my favourites of the whole weekend. So I just wanted to start off by, just checking in. How has your summer been?
Yeah, great. The tour of Monster Magnet was just amazing. We love playing in Europe. We haven't been out there since before the pandemic, maybe once.
We did one show since the pandemic out there as a festival, but it's the first time we've toured.
Yeah, and before the pandemic, we were backwards and forwards on the what's it called?
We lived in the tunnel.
We were backwards all the time. So it was great to get back out to Europe, and like Monster Magnet is such a great band, and such nice people as well. So that was great. And 2,000 Trees was cool as well.
2,000 Trees is a good way to wrap up. We've just been like, we're just always really busy, even if we're not doing anything that's kind of like front facing, like doing shows, something. We're always busy because we make all our own videos, and the amount of extra work that entails and everything. It's great to have the creative control over it. We love it, and we love being able to express ourselves in that way. But we are control freaks, which comes with a massive mountain of like stuff to do, which is, we wouldn't have it any other way, but it just means this whole summer.
Yeah, when people say like, how's your summer? It's like, oh, is it summer? Like I've been in a dark room for weeks on end, so
The tour was the first time we got to relax. Do you know what I mean? Like that was as close as a thing we had to a holiday as we can imagine. Like it was during the insanely hot period as well. And we had the joy of breaking down on the second day and spending a day sat on baking hot tarmac outside a Mercedes garage, knowing that we were missing a show and we were about 7 hours away from our accommodation, and just feeling like, welcome back to touring in Europe. But actually, as soon as we saw that, it was plain sailing, and it was absolutely great. Loved it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you got over that little hiccup, and obviously, the shows, from what I can see from social media and everything, went down really, really well. And obviously, something else going down really, really well, from what I can see, is Bloodsuckers. So it's your second album. It's just come out, and obviously, I always touch on reaction at some point during these podcasts because it is so instantaneous these days with social media. It's not like the old days where you had to wait for magazines to come out with reviews, etc., etc. How have you found the reaction so far to Bloodsuckers?
Oh, just amazing. The record's like very personal, and we made it entirely for ourselves, to be honest. Partly because I think that's like really important as an artist, is you need to be making stuff that you love, and that really should be your only metric. But also partly because I was in such a difficult place mentally that was all I could do, was make something for myself and use it in that way. So to see it out in the world and have, the reaction we're getting from fans it's just been like humbling. Actually.
It has been humbling because when we were making it, there was no recognition of that it was ever going to even come out, because we were struggling from day to day so much because of Kitty had lost her mum just before the recording and was going through a like intense level of grief and mental turmoil. There was enough just to get to the end of each day. So the idea that there was this kind of like, in 6 months' time, there's going to be a record on a shelf somewhere that people are going to buy, just felt like, it felt like fantasy land. And so we just focused on creating what we were creating in that moment, creating the world that day that we needed to live in, to be able to kind of get through everything, and to now see that, oh shit, it is out, it is in the world, and people are responding to it and finding what we kind of like on reflection really hoped after we'd finished it, was like, there's some light in the darkness here, that people are coming and writing to us and saying, this is really helping me. We had a note today from someone saying, from This Is Not the End. This song isn't just therapy for you, it's therapy for me too. Thank you so much. And that means the world.
I mean, yeah, I've got goosebumps just like sat thinking about it. It's just this incredible feeling, and I think that's something I've changed quite profoundly, like my views on what being a musician and artist is really in the last kind of few years. And it, for me now, it is all about that reaching out to people and connecting with people, and being really vulnerable and honest myself on record in order to kind of like reach out into the world and connect with people. And that's what it's doing. So it's great.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I absolutely love what you said around the only metric that matters is your own love for what you're making, because so many guests that I speak to, there are so many pressures in the industry these days to almost pigeonhole music into a certain genre, or obviously create music that is fit for the streaming environment, i.e. you need to get that chorus in there early, etc., etc. But yeah, the fact that you create everything yourselves, you're doing it for yourselves, it is such a wonderful story. And obviously, my condolences for your loss, Kitty. And that's one of the few things in life that everyone shares, everyone experiences. There's not a lot of shared experiences in this life, unfortunately, and sadly, one of them is a horrible one. And that just, I think, as you touch on, just makes it so relatable. And definitely something I picked up was, yes, as you said, Light in the Dark, John. It was a really defiant record of, yes, life isn't perfect, but there is hope there as well, which I think came across really, really well.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad that you heard that.
Yeah, no, definitely did. Absolutely fantastic record that obviously listeners I implore to go and check out. Obviously stream it, but preferably buy it would be nice, of course. So how was the recording process for you as a whole this time? Obviously second album, first working with Spine Farm Records, but of course, as you've touched on, it's still driven massively creatively by yourselves. How was it this time around for you?
Yeah, very difficult. Very, as I said, it was like such a difficult time. We started weeks after my mum died, and she died unexpectedly and like very quickly, and it was just a crazy time. And we started like straight away. I think because like I was thinking about it, and it's like obviously I was going to make a record because that's what my whole life is, this band and making music and making art. So the first thing I kind of turned to was making music, singing and things like that. So it was really difficult, but it kind of also was massively helpful for me because it gave me something to focus on, and I've described it as like a light kind of to follow, to kind of pull me along in those first few months when I was really bewildered and struggling. And we recorded it all ourselves here in our studio. We did the drums in a place called Lightship 95, which is a really cool studio in London.
It's on a boat.
On a boat.
Yeah, so it's in the hull of a boat right next to the O2. And yeah, so we went into the drums there, and then doing everything else ourselves is just, it's the only way we found so far to be able to get across what's inside our heads. As soon as you have to explain what you're intending to someone else, even with the best intention and the greatest skill set you can imagine, there's always a dilution that happens. The end product might arguably to some people even be better, but for us as artists it's less satisfying. And we're doing this to satisfy our artistic need, not to please someone else. If we wanted to be making money, we wouldn't be in a band. If all you're thinking about is a product that you want to make, go make something else. Like, we're doing this to satisfy a deep need to like hear something that doesn't currently exist. You're making the band that you wish existed, and that was always our goal. And Spine Farm, really, I mean, we heard almost nothing from them from the start of like, just, it was we trust you to do the things the way you want to do it. And we'd send them bits and pieces, like, here's a song that we're kind of halfway through, and it was like, great, cool, keep going. The only difference to that was that we did one song with a guy called Sean Bevan. So Sean Bevan, he engineered a lot of Nine Inch Nails stuff. We're big fans of Nine Inch Nails, and he's done like a lot of other great projects. And when we were starting the project, we were quite overwhelmed by like the task at hand because of the situation Kitty was in. It felt like just enough to kind of like get up in the morning, you know, rather than suddenly we had like this idea, oh, it's a major label album that you're going to be putting out. And we've always done everything ourselves before anyway, but it was kind of like always on our label and on our terms. And there was just a little bit of like,
well, making a record is really difficult.
Yeah.
Like the actual technical endeavor of making a record is really fucking hard.
Yeah, it is.
And we just, you know, we were like, we're going to do this like pretty much entirely ourselves. We were quite daunted by the process. But the first thing we did was we started working with Sean Bevan, and he's over in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So it was all done via Zoom calls, all the production and everything. And he really gave us the confidence to make the rest of the record, because he listened to our demo of the song Follow You and like loved it, and really like said to us, you know, encouraged us, didn't he, that, you know, you can do this, like you guys can, you've got it in you to deliver.
Yeah, I think he'd be the first to admit he didn't do tons, you know. He was like, you guys are you're doing the right thing, like you're following your artistic sort of desire rather than thinking of it in any other way. And he goes, and that's what I'd be encouraging you to do anyway, so just do your thing. And then he mixed the song, and when we got that back, we're like, yes, like the confidence, we're like, that's us. Hearing it through someone else's ears who we trusted allowed us then to do the rest of the record ourselves and kind of use that as a blueprint to measure everything by. It was a great experience.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to hear you like talk about that experience, to be fair. Like I say, there's normally so many pressures, and obviously, you know, Sean and you know, his work with you obviously gave you that confidence, as you say, to realize, you know, yeah, we're doing the right thing, cracking on, and the freedom that Spine Farm have obviously given you as well. So refreshing to hear of in this day and age in the music industry. So yeah, and as we've said, the outcome of all of that is a fantastic album, and it was led by the title track, was the first single you put out into the world. Obviously we featured it over on our playlist straight away, just fell in love with it straight away. What about that song in particular made you think, well, this is the lead single? Because obviously the lead single for any album is always quite strategically important to set up, you know, what's to follow. What stood out about Bloodsuckers for you, the single?
The first thing is that I really wanted the opening line of our record to be "Bloodsucker motherfucker." I thought that was like the coolest thing ever.
It's like set out like an intent to be, yeah, it's a major league, you know, because when people that we know vaguely, like in the industry and stuff, they're kind of aware, are you signed to Spine Farm? There is this assumption you're going to make a big glossy sounding record that plays a bit more by the rules, and we were like, oh fuck that, like we made the record totally ignoring the rules, like intentionally kind of being abrasive, because that's the attitude that we needed to get across to survive the days, you know.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, we're not going to compromise on it now. We've been away for a little while making this record. There's been COVID, you know, there's all of these halts and pauses, and it feels like in the music scene at the moment that there is a general trend to really commodify rock music. And we were like, well, let's just let everyone know that we're not interested in that. Let's go out with the like hardest song on the record, you know. And it really kind of sums up our attitude. It's got a lot of like the anger that was part of the recording process, and we wanted something that just sonically kind of sounded different to other stuff that we were hearing. We knew that it's not playing by the rules. You know, the obvious thing would have been to put out a song like Outsider first. It is like an easier listen, you know, but we just didn't want to do that.
Yeah, and I love that attitude. I really, really do. It's again so refreshing. And something else I really love is music videos. So people that have watched the podcast regularly know that I always try and put a spotlight on the music videos. It's a real lost art form these days. And again, the work that you guys do, I know how painstaking it is just to edit these podcasts, let alone edit something like a music video. So I mean, kudos to you for actually being able to do that yourselves and having the skill and obviously the patience to do it. And
thank you. No one ever says that.
No one ever says that.
Because it is a lot of hard work. It's fucking annoying. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I say I completely understand it, and I've got so much respect for you for doing it. And they've come out really, really well as well. Like the videos for obviously there's Bloodsuckers, Animal, Outside have all got their own videos that you've put together, and obviously listeners can go and watch them on YouTube because that's where we watch videos these days. Gone are the days of music TV, which I used to sit in front of religiously as a teenager.
It's pretty sad, that, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think
it
that's
is.
a big loss for teenagers, music TV, because I did as well. If you're bored, we just stick on like MTV or Kerrang. Actually, I think Kerrang TV is still around, isn't it? But culture's
changed, and it was a real way of discovering people, because it's one thing to hear a song, but I think hearing a song and seeing the way the band want to present themselves really tells you a lot. And it was easier to buy into something that was maybe a little bit outside of your normal thing, when you're like, oh, this looks like the kind of thing I want to go and watch, this is going to be great on stage. And it's a real shame, but thank you for the compliments about our videos.
No, absolutely. I hate to think how many hours I spent in front of Krang and Scuzz and MTV2 and all of those back before school, after school, all I used to do. And obviously sticking with the single Bloodsuckers, and obviously the video for that in particular. I watched it again just before talking to you, and I just absolutely love the visual effect of that video. And like you said, it draws me to the band more and goes, I want to see this band. How did you conceptualize that video in particular?
We so when we wrote the song Bloodsuckers, it was like really early on, actually, before making like the record. It was like the first
one of the first
song,
things,
we actually wrote. And we were so pleased with it that we immediately, in a weird moment of like I don't know, excitement, got ourselves some merch made up just for me and John. That said Bloodsuckers on it, which is really odd now thinking back that we were that confident that this was going to be a thing.
There's one detail missing in that, which is that we had talked about the fact that it felt like we'd talked before about the fact that our music feels like a contact sport, we engage with it wholeheartedly when we play live and everything. And we were like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a team called the Bloodsuckers, Team Bloodsuckers?
Sorry, I need to give you more context.
And so when we wrote the song, we were like, cool, we should do some Team Bloodsuckers merch. And we had no reason to sell merch at that point because we were between release and everything. So we're like, fuck it, let's just make our own. So we got some stuff made up. We were that confident and excited about it, and that kind of informed the
because the music video is it's sports team games, sports related, and the idea was kind of going out to play a sport is a bit like going out to war, being in the changing room beforehand and building yourself up for the moment. And that's kind of how we were seeing the rest of the record is preparing for war,
we are a team, and it's the stakes are as high as you want to make them, a sport. A game of football is just some people kicking a ball around a field to some people, or it's life and death to other people. It's the stakes are as high as you want them to be. And that's kind of what we wanted to do with this kind of team thing. There's a real kind of romance and excitement to the idea of being part of any kind of gang. And it's just a way of doing that. And then we filmed the live part of that. We filmed that on the coldest night of the year. Do you remember it was insanely cold in January? Really.
Yeah.
It was a weird freak weather event. We filmed it on the coldest night of the year at midnight in the middle of nowhere. Put these floodlights out, and we were having to run. We did it near a building. We were having to run inside between takes and just try and warm up.
That was not safe.
No,
it was definitely borderline. I'm not sure we should be doing.
Yeah, there's frost forming on all the gear between each take and stuff. It was just
it all off. It was insane.
But it looks great. All of the breath
and stuff. So it looks amazing. But we did suffer.
It was intense, and because we're making it ourselves and editing it ourselves, there's always that nervous moment of when you first open the computer to watch the files back, and you're like, is it good? Has it been worth the effort? Because there's always a chance you watch it back and go, shit, can't see Kitty's face in any of it or something. Do you know what I mean? You have to reshoot it or something. So we're really happy with how it came out. That was a brutal shoot. It's a habit that we have of making. Animal was the same. We turned up. We knew we wanted to do it in East London, where we had shot the Daughter of Lucifer video from a previous release, because there's a kind of a slight lyrical tie-in. And we got there, and a storm just started, and we were like, we can't do it outside because of this storm. So we had to walk around and try and find somewhere. We found like a subway, an underpass, and went and did the video there. You know, like sort of half drenched, absolutely freezing,
broken glass,
crazy. It's always hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they do say about, you know, suffering for your art. And I mean, I talked about how painstaking the editing process is, but yeah, I mean, obviously buttons for punishment when it comes to recording as well. And definitely encourage listeners to go on to the St. Agnes YouTube, obviously, and check out the videos for all of the singles, obviously from this album, but also the albums previous as well. And obviously, I say such a lost start, and you guys have really like cheered me up, because I always try and draw it in. There's been some podcasts recently where I've gone and looked, and there's not even a music video been made, because with cost of living and, you know, the impacts on the music industry, I think that's these days one of the first things that gets cut from the budget. Like, okay, we can't afford to do a music video. So it's so refreshing again to see you guys have really pulled out all the stops, and it ties in really with where I want to go next. Is just the general aesthetic around the band. I again absolutely love, and there's a number of bands out there that are doing this really, really well. And I mean, Ghost, I'm wearing a Ghost t-shirt. They've certainly got it down to a T. And obviously there's, like, you know, historically My Chemical Romance, but newer days, you know, Creeper and a load of other bands that I think just have a great package to them that doesn't feel forced and commercial, but obviously just again helps entice the listeners into that kind of world. And you guys, from what I can see, with everything you do, you have that, and it works really, really well. And is that, you know, a conscious thing on your part to try and to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, the music exists in an imaginary place that we can easily kind of access. So when we're talking about a song, you know, and we're writing it, we're kind of envisaging it occurring in a sort of setting, and the visual side of it immediately comes. It's already there.
You know, I'm thinking of the video as I'm writing the song. It all kind of comes together, and it's always like very like strong visual imagery, and that kind of does guide the song as well, really. Like, because you start to figure out, well, it's in this part of our world, and it needs to feel like this, and I'm picturing, like, I don't know, a dark alleyway and like flicker neon lighting, or I'm picturing, and it all kind of comes together. I think, like, as people, like individually, we both, from being little kids, have always been quite attracted to dark things and creepy things and goth things. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why anyone is, but obviously lots of people are just more attracted to like the darker kind of aspects of life. But I think it's fun as well. I think that's a big part of it, you know. Is like,
it's creative,
it's really creative, and it's really fun.
It's nice to like feel like you're part of a gang. We talked about before, like you feel like the same. You're kind of like, it's not a uniform, but it's like you're just entering into this kind of like aesthetic and everything. I think the difference, so if you say like the bands that you listed are all really great examples, all of them have created that out of a desire to express an idea. There's a big difference between that and someone getting a band and just going, we should just put them, you know, a record label, we should put them all in suits. You know, there's a big difference between.
I think you can feel when it's an organic, natural, as you say. It's not a forced thing. It's like, it just is, you know, it's who they are.
A big influence for me growing up was when I was a teenager. I was obviously into rock music and stuff, but I didn't feel like I'd quite found my band, you know, like I didn't know that, but I was always really interested, but felt like I like this about this band and this about this band. And then I read an article in Kerrang about White Zombie, Rob Zombie's old band. And I saw this picture and I was like, it just looked right. They just looked kind of crazy and weird and like authentic. And then I heard the record and it sounded exactly how they looked. And that combining of the two things just felt great to me. Like, it didn't feel conservative. Like, a lot of rock music and metal can be quite conservative, you know, there's a lot of rules about it, and a lot of, you know, it's mostly men who are embarrassed to draw attention to themselves, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so seeing someone who's kind of like happy to be kind of freakishly different, not as a pose, but just do it and be it, I just found so attractive. And that's just really informed kind of what we've done as a band.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Kitty used the word organic, and that was on the tip of my tongue as well. You can tell, and for St Agnes, definitely, I can see how it is a labour of love from you as much as anything, you two. And another thing I loved, because I love a dad joke, and obviously it's not necessarily a dad joke, but I did see obviously you've got the blood splatter vinyl available, which obviously given it's the Bloodsuckers album, I love the little details like that. Yeah, I really, really do. And fans listening, you can still go to the band's website and pick up some more bundles. I was also really intrigued to see you got the companion guides there as well, which again is something different that isn't done. And again, I love to be able to see something a bit different. So again, how did the concept come up to do that?
Yeah, so when I was saying, like, when I'm writing music, I'm picturing the world and the video that it's going to be and things like that. I also make art that ties in with the songs, and just lots of like creative processes happening around writing music, really. And we decided, like, we did it for our EP Vampire. We decided to compile lots of the art and write about the record, because I like writing, John likes writing. And it's to give, like, it's kind of like before, when you had like a record and you had like the record book, the sleeve, and you had all of that like pictures and information and writing around it. And I just like, and CDs actually were great for that. The CD booklet was amazing. And I remember being a teenager and just obsessing over reading like every little bit in the CD booklet, just to know more about the band and the world and just immerse myself more. So we really wanted to do something like that, just to give the fans and the listeners just way more information about like the recording process, about what songs are about, things like that, and art around it. And I'm really proud of the companion guide. Actually, it's like 40 pages. And it's really cool.
It's just a deeper dive for anyone who's really engaged with the record and wants more. It's there. Some people just want to put the streaming link on and absorb it while they're like doing the washing up or something, and other people want to sit there and immerse themselves and live in it. And we wanted to give that, rather than relying on a magazine doing an interview and hoping people can glean. We're like, well, let's just do it in our own words,
And it's so nice to have something like tactile as well, because obviously we live so much on our phones, and it just doesn't hit the same way as like holding something in your hands.
And we've been really fortunate to work with some great photographers, we don't get to share half of the stuff they do. And again, the photos that work well on Instagram are ones that are basically just a close-up of someone's face. We've got hundreds of photos that aren't like that that we really wanted to share, that deserve to be printed larger. That's why, that's a lot of this one has photos from our sort of collaborators, Rob Blackham and Scott Chalmers, who've both done loads of pictures, and Derek Bremner as well. We've done photos with all three of them, and we love them, and it's so nice to have them there.
To see them, like on A4, is it A5? What is it? I don't know. A4?
It's a comic book size. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, it is wonderful. I mean, we were being nostalgic over music videos and music TV, but I'd like by going by a CD, the first thing I'd do before I even press play would be read through the booklet. That was just my routine, and I'd immerse myself in that. And it is completely lost. So I love to see things like that, and definitely, obviously, encourage listeners, if you can afford to, obviously go and pick up a copy. And you can create loads of different bundles on there. There's signed posters, obviously different items of merch. So definitely, listeners, the link will be in the bio of this episode. Go and check that out. And while you're there on the website, if you click on the live tab, you can also see that the band have got a tour coming up this autumn. So obviously hitting up quite a few of the usual cities, plus some obviously the less frequented. Local to me is Norwich, so I'll be definitely coming along to that. So what should fans expect from a St Agnes show if they're going to come along?
We work really hard on the live show. We're kind of obsessive about everything, and we have a really specific vision of what a good live show is. And so much of it is about trying to just shut the outside world out and create a place where people can lose themselves in the moment, us and the audience. And everything from like the lights, the sound, the set list to our performance is focused on trying to get that kind of magic kind of concoction to happen, because like Kitty said with the record, we're quite selfish in the way that we actually kind of approach everything with the band. We create what we think is the greatest thing that we can do. We're not trying to be like someone else. We're not thinking, oh, people are going to like this, or anything. We're just like, what do we want to go and see?
Yeah.
And for us, it's something where the band are really emotionally engaged with the music they're playing. You're seeing an artist trying to authentically kind of like connect in that moment. And you as a fan, if those songs mean a lot to you, you want to see someone deliver them in the way that they've been doing it in your head. When you're listening to the record, you picture them singing it, and you want to see that. And it's your job, I think, as an artist, to do your best, not to fake that, but to genuinely enter into that headspace.
It's hard. It's not easy to do that. And I think particularly like with this record, some of the songs are so personal. Like This Is Not the End. We've been playing that live on the Monster Magnet tour and at Trees as well. And it's really difficult. You know, I've been crying a lot on stage, basically. So you can expect to see me crying, I would imagine, to come to the tour.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know, it's very emotional. It's gonna be an emotional tour.
Yeah, it's an emotional tour, and something that we've noticed from our audiences, like on the Monster Magnet tour, you know, we're opening for a bigger band. Loads of people in the audience have never heard us before, but the response we were getting was amazing. And people, even though they didn't know what was the background of the band, you could tell that people coming up to merch desk and being like, we could just tell there's something really, this matters to you. And that to us is like amazing to hear, because it does matter.
Deepest compliment. Yeah, absolutely.
And we've always made this band to be something that in our day-to-day life, we don't get to walk around being crazy and aggressive and smashing stuff up and, you know, crying at the drop of a hat and having moments of like extreme euphoria. You don't get to do that. And we want to have a totally like drop all the cynicism, drop all of the like self-consciousness, because all these things cloud our thoughts all day, every day, and just be your naked, raw self, you know, and free. Yeah, it's an amazing feeling when you manage to like achieve that moment.
Yeah, and the Tree set was such a powerful, just I think it was like half an hour, but just obviously just flew by because it was just so enjoyable. And I'd definitely encourage listeners based off that to come along to a show. So preferably pick up a physical copy of the album, learn the songs, come along to a show and sing the songs along with you guys. That would be my message to the listeners today. And that brings us to the final part of the podcast, which is a new segment we brought in for the last maybe 5 or 6 podcasts now, called Magic Wand. So I'm going to issue you both with a magic wand. You can have one each, and you can have one wish each, or one you can change one thing about the music industry, basically. Obviously there's a lot that does need to change in the industry, and we've had some really fascinating answers over the last sort of month or so of episodes. So we'll start with you, John, if you want, and what will you change with your magic wand?
I mean, there's so many different avenues I could go down, but just the first thing that came to my mind was, I think, because you're talking about the music industry, so we're kind of talking about the people that work in it, who I'm thinking of the people who work in the music industry who aren't the musicians. And I think it would be just great for people to have a bit more kind of courage in their personal taste and conviction. Is that what you're going to say? We've been incredibly fortunate that we have developed a relationship with Spine Farm, and their head of A&R is a guy called Dante. He's an incredibly experienced music industry veteran and just an absolute lover of rock music and art, and he really treats us with like a great deal of respect. And there needs to be, I think, if that attitude could spread further, and people be braver and bolder about like, well, I think this is amazing, so I'm going to stand behind it, even though it maybe hasn't got 10,000 Instagram fans before they've released a song or whatever, you know, just go, this is good and I think people should hear it. because I'm a human being, and if I like it, there's going to be other human beings like me that also like it. I think that would.
It's just like there needs to be more risk taking by the music industry, and I think like kind of progressing that idea of being bolder. Like I think people need to invest in, you know, not the normal thing in rock and metal, which is, you know, white men basically. You know, the whole rock and metal industry is built, you know, on those kind of artists. And I just think that, you know, like more money will always be put behind those projects because it's like a safe bet. You know, people know that there'll be an audience for a certain kind of thing. But it would be so great to see more risk taking of like, no, fuck it, like this is great. And yeah, there might not be like a model for this that's already happened, but someone's like got to be the first one, right? Like there's got to be a trailblazer.
Believe in trailblazers. Believe people
and fund them properly. You know, like, because that's the problem really for a lot of great artists is they're not being funded properly, so they can't get the stuff out there. You know?
Yeah, I'd say it's something that we kind of been over when we see like other bands that we know that we've really admired, smaller bands, is that by the time the industry is paying enough attention to them, they've been going long enough that they're kind of exhausted and finding it really hard to kind of maintain it. And I think people like saw them earlier and could have got into it and believe in it and push it. And I think it would make all the difference. There's a great Frank Zappa quote where he talks about this. He said that like when he was like young and first in bands, the record executives were people that were just businessmen smoking cigars that knew nothing about music, that just wanted to make money. And they would go, well, I don't know what this is, but if people like it, fuck it, I'll fund it, whatever it is, you know. And then the next stage was those businessmen being like, why don't I get one of these cool young guys to come in and find loads of other bands for me? And he goes, and that was the beginning of the problem, because those cool young guys are really fearful because they've suddenly got a great job. They don't want to upset anyone. And they generally just want to get people that look like them on stage rather than having the boldness to go, well, what are people into? What's exciting? And I think that there's just a fear generally around all art. You know, it's not just music, it's most like media and everything, that to conform. Like people talk about that right now music is genreless. I disagree totally. Like I think that there's a lot more genres and bands can flip between genres, but each of the genres they touch on, people expect them to kind of, when they do like a more like metal song, to stick to the rules of metal, and when they do a punky song, to stick to the rules of punk. We hate that stuff in life, to blur the lines. And it's amazing how like you just do one thing slightly outside of the norm, and people are like, what the fuck is that, you know? So yeah, boldness. Lots of words to say, be bold.
No, but it's such an important thing, and I couldn't agree more. It's a really good choice there, and I'm really sorry, Kitty, I went to John first and he stole your what you were going to see.
That's why I chimed in. Do you know what I mean? I feel like
so you can just double down with your magic wand, and maybe something will actually happen if magic is real. But definitely, so much that does need to change in the industry, and it's really been fascinating adding that section into the podcast. So thank you for that, and obviously thank you for joining me on the podcast. It's been really, really great chatting with you. Bloodsuckers is an amazing album that listeners need to go and check out. And we always throw the last message just over to the guests. So what would be your last message for the listeners today?
We hope that you find something in the record we hope that the right people who need to find something in music right now, that our record does that for you. You know, like art is about the listener as much as it is about the artist, and the right record at the right time can make the world of difference. And we just hope that our record does that for some people. And you know, we love hearing the stories that people have sent us. So if anything you want to say to us, like, we're reachable, you know, come say hi at a gig or message us or whatever. And we love it. We love the community that we're building.
Yeah, no, it is a fantastic community, and obviously I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast and sharing all of that with me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that chat there with St. Agnes. Please do make sure that you check out their new album, Bloodsuckers, and of course, follow the band across social media to stay up to date with everything coming from them. You can also follow Full Pelt on social media. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And finally, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening, because we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Full Pelt Music Podcast.